we almost lost Micah
Hmm.
after about 7 weeks after the birth of our second daughter. She was losing a lot of blood, went in for a same day procedure, then ended up an ambulance ride, two or three more procedures. And there was literally talks of a blood transfusion. And I mean, it was scary stuff for me, for you. It was one of those moments to exercise our faith, to activate our faith, to
Hmm.
pray. And when that happened, I just learned that life itself is a precious gift.
Good morning, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about 7 things that we've learned in 7 years of marriage that can hopefully help you in whatever season that you're in.
That's amazing. And can you believe it's been 7 years?
I will say 7 years flies by. I don't care what anybody says. When you get married, time speeds up. Children make life go faster. And that's not always a good thing, but we're going to enjoy the process.
You're listening to the FYI podcast and streaming on YouTube with Josiah and Micah Keneally. We are your hosts, and this is where we unpack your questions, whether it's about relationships, popular topic, but man, all things adulting, faith and theology, finances. Did I miss anything else?
Faith, life, adulting. I think any and all questions go. So the answer is not wrong.
Every week on Fridays, we drop a new episode. We're over 125 episodes in. Thanks to you as the listener for asking, whether it's on Instagram, FYI
Hmm.
Podcast, or www.fyi-podcast.com. You can send in your questions, and we don't have all the answers, but we will turn to scripture, unpacking a verse each week. And here is this week's verse of the day.
Yeah, so if you're following along, Ecclesiastes 4 verses 12 says this in the New Living Translation. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. So three are even better, and a triple braided cord is not easily broken.
In marriage, in singleness, in dating and engagement, ultimately in romantic relationships of any kind, we have seen at weddings, sometimes they'll use this verse and literally braid a cord of three strands or a unity candle,
Hmm.
where it's like two families become one, but one is actually three,
Yeah.
and three is actually one, a picture of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And in our case, Micah, myself, and Christ at the center of our marriage. And babe, kind of recap a little bit of our journey, and then we're going to unpack those 7 things that we've learned in 7 years of marriage.
Oh my gosh. Well, in 2014, we met. 2015, we started dating. 2017, we got engaged and married. Within 90 days, we planned a wedding.
No kidding. I proposed at the Grand Canyon
Yep.
where you said,
It's about time. Actually said, yes, I would love to go on a lifetime of adventure with you.
and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to drop in that picture because that picture was unplanned, but somebody happened to be there with just the telescope of a camera on the south rim of the Grand Canyon,
Hmm.
rushed the SD card over to us and gave it to us with our proposal pictures. And people started to see that photo. And I remember 7 years ago, people were asking me, like, what would you have said if Micah said no? And the joke was always, I would have said, push me.
Push me now. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so we got married in 2017. In 2018, we both had career changes and pivots
That's
onto a
right.
college
Yep.
campus where
Yep.
we did some ministry. And in 2019, we bought our first home. In 2020, we had our first daughter, Aurora. In 2021, we had Avalon. And in 2022, we kind of had our third baby, which is Young Adults Today. And a part of this Young Adults Today ministry and nonprofit that we lead is FYI Podcast is a part of that. So as you can see, we always had a significant thing happening literally I think every year of marriage. And it's always been fun and it's always been exciting. And life is what you make it. And I think what we forget, even before we begin, is
Mm.
to for you to be reminded that the life that you create and the life that you craft with Christ at the center will have longevity. It'll be beautiful. You will live and leave a legacy. And in this day and age, you get to craft the life that you want. But when you team up with Christ, it's even better in the process, even more so when it's built on him and your ministry is revolving around him. So
That was powerful.
that was unscripted.
Oh my gosh. And I just have to celebrate. I think the camera is looking good on YouTube. I think the microphones. Let us know in the comments, in the chat, if you notice any difference in sound quality or video quality. Just a huge shout out testimony. God put it on us on somebody's heart, this podcast.
Hmm.
And one day we got a text from a friend because Young Adults Today is a ministry. It's a nonprofit. Like this podcast exists because of viewers and listeners like you, one of who sent us two brand new Shure microphones with the stands, the arms, and it took us a couple weeks to upgrade and get all the right plugins. And I think this is our first full episode of FYI podcast where both microphones are working. Am I right?
I hope that you're right because we're on air. So hopefully both are recording properly. And because of somebody's generosity and their obedience and saying yes to getting behind young adults today on all levels and all fronts, you guys hopefully get to reap the benefits of better sound quality, better video, and hopefully just get to enjoy the things that God's doing in your life as well. So we're going to start with the 7 things that we've learned in marriage. And these aren't the only things. I would say these are probably some significant things maybe that we've learned. So Josiah, why don't we go every other? You kick it off with number 1.
I'll kick us off
Here,
with
let me
number
help you
one.
out with the mic too.
I'm still learning.
You're
We're
still
we're a
learning.
work in progress, but when our friend texted us that about these microphones coming from Amazon, they just said, "Let this be God's smile to keep going."
Hmm.
And so we're really grateful. Thanks for tuning in, FYI. And the best is yet to come. The first thing that we've learned, I think, in 7 years of marriage is that life itself is a beautiful and precious gift.
Hmm.
And I remember after the birth of our second daughter, Avalon, so this is almost coming up on 2.5, 3 years
Yep.
ago. And much of why we stepped out of our last role, which we loved, but into a step of faith of launching our own ministry of Young Adults Today as a nonprofit, we almost lost Micah
Hmm.
after about 7 weeks after the birth of our second daughter. She was losing a lot of blood, went in for a same day procedure, then ended up an ambulance ride, 2 or 3 more procedures. And there was literally talks of a blood transfusion. And I mean, it was scary stuff for me, for you. It was one of those moments to exercise our faith, to activate our faith, to
Hmm.
pray. And when that happened, I just learned that life itself is a precious gift.
Yeah, I think it was an evaluation. It was an opportunity to evaluate, is what we are currently doing the biggest kingdom contribution that we have to offer, or is this a stepping stone into something greater?
Yep.
And maybe you're up against something too, whether you're single, dating, married, engaged, and you find yourself at a crossroads, asking yourself that question and taking it before the Lord, like, Lord, is this my biggest kingdom contribution, or is this season that I'm in a stepping stone for something greater? And when I say greater, it doesn't mean more important. Greater just means that we all start at ground zero
Yeah.
in forms of education, in forms of occupation, and we grow into these more significant roles with more responsibility, um, more accountability, more, I don't know, influence, whatever that is. And it's a matter of what are you doing to say yes to God in the transitions of life. And that was one of the transitions that we had. And with that, number 2 would realizing it's us realizing that life goes fast. Marriage goes fast. And the older you get, my dad would always say, Micah, just wait until you have kids. And I was single at the time. I was like, Dad, my time is going so fast. And he's like, well, wait till you get married. And if you have kids, like it just goes even faster because one day you're holding your daughter who's 10 minutes old, the next she's 10 years old, and the next, you're walking her down the aisle. So really just taking time to enjoy the seasons that you're in, even when it feels mundane, even when there's growing pains, even when it feels challenging,
Hmm.
to know that life goes fast at large. And one of our friends actually had it was a morbid thought, but it was actually reality. We sat down with these friends after doing some ministry. He looks at everybody at the table. So, how does it feel to have our lives essentially half over? And I'm like, shut up. I'm like, you kidding me? Like, that is like that how you start a fun supper together saying, hey, our lives are essentially half over. Are you happy with the way that you lived? But I'm like, that is actually a great question when you realize the average life expectancy of an American male, I think is what, 78 years old.
Yep. Something like that.
And that's none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. So
Totally.
number 2 essentially is life goes fast. And 7 years went very fast for us.
It's that whole quote, an idea of the days are long, but the years are short.
Hmm.
And there's some long days, there's some short years, but that posture of 1 and 2 together is God, thank you for this gift of life. Thank you for the long days and the short years. Help me to count it like Psalms. Even we
Hmm.
see it in Psalms where the author wrote, "Teach us, Lord, that prayer to number our days so that
Hmm.
we may gain a heart of wisdom." And that leads us to number three, because time's short, priorities really need to be prioritized.
Yep.
And this is what I've learned is talk is cheap. And so many times it's like people will tell you about the great things that they're going to do,
Hmm.
or it's just like, does your walk actually match your talk?
Hmm.
And man, prioritize. That's something that Micah has been kind of an anthem in our house this past year of like, look, time's short. We've got to prioritize our priorities. And then we look at things like our calendar, our to-do list,
Hmm.
each year on our anniversary. This began in Hawaii
Hmm.
on our honeymoon 7 years ago, exactly. As
Yep.
we record this episode, we were on a beach somewhere, probably Waikiki,
Hmm.
and we began with the end in mind. We started setting 1 year goals, 10 year goals, goals beginning with the end in mind. And
Goals that were audacious that
yeah,
we've already seen God complete in five
yeah.
years of marriage, let alone seven. So,
But then it's like maybe it's for some a New Year's resolution is like the new year kind of, but our anniversary happens to fall in mid-year
mhm.
where it's almost like it's the last day of the first half of the year.
Yeah.
And so then we sat down and just kind of like are are the things that we're putting on our calendar, are they matching up with what we say are our priorities?
But I think even when you look at scripture, like let your yes be yes and your no be no, I think that is something that let your word be your word. And I think that's one thing when people overcommit and underdeliver, that's one of the most frustrating things in marriage and outside of marriages when we put expectations on people. But when we see people prioritizing date nights, we see
Mhm,
ourselves doing the
mhm.
same thing. We prioritize our family time, our vacations. And here's the thing about your family, like you are the biggest advocate for your family,
Wow.
period.
Wow.
Like from everything from screen time to family vacations to faith at large to schooling, like you are the biggest advocate for your family and how you advocate for each other in front of others behind the scenes. It does matter because God sees all. So I think when we do that, and we set those priorities, we set those goals, and we sit down and just hear each other out once a year, Josiah and myself specifically in this realm, we learn how to actively listen. And this isn't just once a year on our anniversary. This is like literally every day to actively listen, to hear the other person out, to hear their heart, to hear their concerns, some of the dreams that God has been stirring, or some of the concerns just in life or marriage or parenting. I think when you sit down and you draw a blueprint for your life, for your marriage, and the direction of which you want it to go,
Yeah.
do we need to recalibrate and pull over every once in a while? That's why we reestablish things every June 30th for the goals of 5, 10, 15 years and beyond, like living and leaving a legacy. What does that look like? So, learning how to actively listen really causes you to realize the selfishness of yourself or your inability to not over talk, like speak over somebody.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
in grad school, I remember taking man, maybe interpersonal communication class or something like that. And the idea is that in leadership, this class was about leadership,
Hmm.
but I think it applies to every relationship, whether it's in the workplace or in family. Literally the most game-changing principle in communication. Because what do couples like always fight about? It's like
Communication, number
communicate,
one.
like
Non-Christian and Christian
yeah, yeah, yeah.
relationships.
It's
Doesn't
like,
matter.
what's your growth goal? Oh, we need to become better communicator. Like our relationship would be great if we would both learn how to communicate better, or if she learned how, or if he, and it can become the blame game. But I remember learning in 2016, 2017 or so, this idea of active listening. And I'll share a story of when I did not actively listen. We
Oh,
we
here we
first
go.
got married, and Mike is like, what did you say? It was like the whole 10 p.m. thing, like, don't talk to me.
Okay, so if you know anything about yourself, or if you know anything about me since this, like I just become very unfiltered past 10 p.m. Like I'm tired. I like want to be in bed. Like 10 o'clock is my bedtime. And so when we first got married, I told Josiah essentially, like, just like, don't talk to me past 10 p.m. I don't want to have any meaningful conversation. I don't want to have to pick a fight or have some problem solving resolution, rounding the bases type mentality when it comes to conversation, whether it be buying a new car, getting a new refrigerator,
Conflict
or
resolution.
just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
even something arises in marriage in just our character or something. So I told him that, please do not talk to me or like pick a fight or pick a conversation to have that could wait till morning,
And what
past
happened?
10 p.m. You tell the story. You
Well,
tell me.
so I just 10 p.m. I'd shut the lights off. Hopefully we'd pray at like 9:59 or say goodnight before then. And then it was like, and then finally Micah had asked me like, why don't you talk to me at night? And
It was annoying because he'd be walking around the house like on his phone or doing something like tiptoeing around the house. I'm like, dude, like, what is your problem? Like, yeah, it's past 10 p.m. Like, I never put the time thing together. I'm like, why do you just like shut off like at nighttime? And he's just like, oh, you told me not to talk to you past 10 p.m.
and this is where active listening, I would have, if I was actively listening, I would have said, so
Follow-up
what
question.
I'm hearing you say is like 10 p.m. lights out. When she's like, no, 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 10 p.m. like, let's not talk about the 10 open browsers on your computer about buying a new mini fridge or an important decision like a dishwasher or a kid's education.
Or taxes, or
Yeah,
like, let's
yeah,
not
yeah,
have
yeah.
that conversation at 10.
When
Why?
but instead, so actively listening is that whole idea of like, so what I heard you say is this what you mean? Am I hearing you right? That's active listening. That's been a game changer in our marriage. And that leads us to the fifth thing,
Hmm.
which is support and champion each other's goals. And I think in ministry settings, it's a lot more common for maybe a guy to be a pastor at a church or the leader of an organization. And I mean, we were on an airplane not that long ago, unplanned, flew back from an event or a conference, and there were some other pastors. And we sat next to the pastor's wife.
Hmm.
And she said, both jokingly, kind of tongue in cheek, but also dead serious, she's like, well, when would I have time for any of my own dreams? My whole marriage has been supporting his dreams.
Hmm.
And I wanted to pull our friend aside and be like, bro, pastor, brother, my guy, buddy, sir, whatever the appropriate thing, like, dude, pick one of her goals and dig deep to
Hmm.
find her goal because she's been supporting your goals for all of these years. And so in our space of like nonprofit, ministry, church, there's just a lot of wives who are like a silent supporter. And I'm honestly grateful that Micah is a encourager, supporter of my dreams, cheerleader. But my favorite thing, I've said this since before we got married, I enjoy it when she preaches, probably more than if I preach a message.
Hmm.
I love championing her goals, her books, her projects, her ideas, and getting behind. And I might not do anything, but I want to get my weight behind and
Hmm.
push.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say is we've learned truly a two-way street, how to support each other's and
Yeah.
champion each other's
Yeah.
goals, visions, and dreams.
Well, I just want to like just say that there's nothing wrong with being a supportive wife, and there's nothing wrong with being an introvert if you're a supportive wife. But for you to only buckle up in the passenger seat and kind of be a silent partner and not share your heart with your spouse because you're too busy raising your children, or you're too busy being the busy wife, or you're too busy fill in the blank. I would just say, like, if you've lost yourself in your marriage and your marriage has only become about your partner, and it can be vice versa, it doesn't matter. It
Totally.
could be the other
Totally.
side too. That's where I think we get to point number six. And that's where no matter if you're single, dating, married, or engaged, there's always a he, a she, and a we.
That's good.
He has dreams and aspirations that I don't have, but I'm going to get behind him and say, like, I'd love to support you in that. I have things that I love to do that I actually don't want him to be a part of. Like, and it's okay. Like, I have a girls' Bible study. I have stuff going on in my own life that I love to do. I like house projects. He likes to do the yard stuff. And we can get behind each other and speak into the process, not making decisions without each other necessarily. But there's a he, she, and a we factor. He needs guy time. I need girl time. But there's obviously we, and that is our marriage. And that is what we feel like God's called us to do specifically. But when we start isolating ourselves in the he, she, and we factor and almost compartmentalizing them, so much so either way, where it's only we or it's only he and a she, when there's only we begin to forget who we are and who God's created us to be as an
Uniquely. Yeah.
individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But when it's only about he and she and there is no we, you soon only become another person that you live with. Like
Yeah.
you're just a roommate. You're not really my spouse. Yes, they are on paper and I wear the ring, but are you emotionally connecting with them? Are you communicating every single day? Are you praying together? So really realizing that when you do get to marry, and if you choose to someday, that two do become one, but you are still an individual person. And why I can say that is because on Judgment Day, when we get to heaven face to face
Right.
with God, we are all going to have an account.
That's
It's going to be a one-on-one evaluation of your life, of how you steward what God has given you, your time, your talent, your treasure. And Josiah is not going to be standing next to me.
hmm
He's going to be evaluated like, yep, you're the man of the house. Did you spiritually lead like you were called to lead? Did you steward what I called you to do? Same with me, but maybe different questions because I have a different skill set and a different role in our relationship on some levels. But we are equal playing partners in this game of life and we spur each other on. So you don't want to err too much on the we, where you forget about the he and the she, and you don't want to err too much on the he and the she and forget about the we. So it's this
That's great.
beautiful chord where actually three strands do come together
Mhm.
and we have each other's back and we are stronger together. So,
I remember Dr. Doug Graham taught us this.
mhm,
And it's this idea that when you're single, and we believe you're single up until you say I do,
mhm,
but when you're single, the order of life and priorities and your assignment in life could look like a lot of things. But first, it's the master, then it's the mission, and then you're looking for a mate. But I remember he taught us this, like it's first master Jesus, then it's the mission that God's placed in front of you. Could be work, could be school, could be ministry, whatever. And then it's you're looking for a spouse, a mate. But when you get married, that order changes, and
mhm,
it's first still master Jesus, then it's actually your mate comes before the mission.
mhm.
And so when he said that, I was like, man, I needed to learn that. And
Yeah.
if we were doing 8, that would be the 8th thing. That's like the message within the message, but
Mhm.
we'll call that 6.5, and then the 7th
Yeah.
thing. And we've learned more than this in our marriage, but we just wanted to share 7 on the FYI podcast. 7 of the things that were unique to our journey
Mhm.
that we've learned throughout 7 years of marriage. And I think the 7th is really key and vital, but it's who are you doing life with? Because we talk to most people, and maybe the people that were in their wedding party, and
Mhm.
then it's like they don't even talk to those people anymore.
Mhm.
Whether it was your bridesmaids and your groomsmen, your best friends, your families, your church community, your small group. Um, there's seasonal friends, situational friends, there's lifelong friends. We're talking about the lifelong.
Yeah.
And we're talking, I forget who said it, but you need friends and people in your life that care about and are committed to your marriage's success.
Right.
So who are you doing life with? Individually, together as a couple, if kids are a part of your plan and God's plan for you in the future, then it's like, who are the families that you're doing life with, that you're raising your kids together?
Mhm.
And I think I mean, that's just vital.
Yeah. And I think when you invite people into your life and into your sphere of marriage and children and raising children and having a family, like there's a fun factor that comes, and life should be fun. Like we are called to do life together as Christ followers and as believers. And sometimes it's easy to isolate because you're excited about the relationship that you're in, whether it's dating or is it marriage. Like you can become so enthralled with the person before you that you forget everybody else until something happens with that person and you need to talk to somebody else about it, or you need counseling, or you need a girlfriend just to reflect some things on or some bounce some ideas on. So doing life alone is not what we're created to do. But when you find a partner and you find a spouse to do life with, it goes back to Ecclesiastes 4:12. Like a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but who, when you stand back to back,
Yeah,
like you're a conqueror. And I think that's even with friendships. That's not only in marriage
that's right.
alone, but I think when you do have people that do have your back and will defend and call you up and call you out and have your six, I think that that's important to recognize, to lean into and not take for granted because I mean, it takes a lifelong to make some lifelong friends. And if you can make those early on in your 20s and 30s that are lifelong, you're really setting yourself up for success, I would say, in the friendship department. So,
Oh my gosh, I'm reminded of the full body armor of God that we're given
mhm,
through just the power of the Holy Spirit, and you've got the helmet of salvation and the belt of truth and the sword of the Spirit and the breastplate of righteous, the shoes that come fitted with the readiness to share the gospel, the shield of faith. I like the question that has been asked. What's the one part of the body that there's no armor for?
Your back.
It's your back. And so then it begs the question, well, why? And it could be because there's no retreating. You can
Mhm.
only advance, like no turning back. I like that.
Mhm.
I think additionally, a powerful one is like I get the picture of a band of brothers or just an army
Mhm.
that we are God's army
Mhm.
and we're battle ready. This is a war and we're linking arms together and I've got your back and you've got my back and there's no need for body armor because we've got each other's back.
Right.
That's a powerful picture
Right.
and just word image. And I just want to take a second and thank you as a listener and as a viewer of the FYI podcast. Thank you, especially if you subscribe. Did you know that the vast majority, especially the people on YouTube who watch this, are not subscribed to the
Mhm.
FYI podcast? But if you hit that subscribe button, we'd be so grateful. That way you'll never miss a thing. But man, we've got new episodes coming. You can unpack a question and ask it, whether it's on faith and theology.
Mhm.
We're pastors and Bible teachers. We don't have all the answers, but we love this journey learning together with you all as a community.
Mhm.
We don't want to be a place where the church is a place that you don't go for answers, or that we're presenting answers to questions that you're not asking. So that's why we unpack the questions from you as the listener. And man, leave us a review, a rating, wherever you're streaming. Let us know if it's a thumbs up, if you have a follow-up
Mhm.
question or which episode you're listening to. We are so grateful. Until next time, you're listening to the FYI podcast.